there and welcome. I'm going to show you how to set up a white label domain using a root domain, not using a subdomain. So there's some slight differences. In a different video, we showed you how to configure white label domains using a subdomain. If you're going to use a root domain, it actually uses a few extra steps. If you're not familiar, or if you're like, I'm not sure if I'm using a root domain or a subdomain, basically here's the difference. If you own a domain, let's say Carson.com, the root domain is Carson.com. Basically, without anything before it or after it, just your root domain is called Carson.com. If you wanted to use a subdomain, you would add basically a prefix to that domain name. So you would do something like 360.carson.com. So for the purposes of Open House and configuring your white label domain configuration, if you're using a root domain, that means you're just using straight up the domain Carson.com. If you wanted to use a subdomain, what you would be using is something like 360 or tours.carson.com. And that's the difference between a subdomain and a root domain. So go back and check out one of our other videos on how to configure white labels for subdomains, but this one is for if you're using a root domain. Now, I just logged into my Open House portal. Let me make myself smaller and put myself up here in the corner. And right here, I'm going to go over to the left side down here to account. This is where you configure your white label domain settings. And you can see here my account settings, and we have this new section called white label configuration. What we're going to do is do the view space domain, and you can see our status is not configured. So what we're going to do is the domain is called openhouse.dev. This could obviously be anything, any domain that you own. And I'm just going to use my root domain. I'm not adding a prefix to that like tours.openhouse.dev or anything. It's just the domain itself, openhouse.dev. And then what I'll do is I'll click save. Okay, and you can see immediately the status has changed from not configured to preparing. So now on our end for Open House, we need to do a couple little things to set this up for you. We did our setup on Open House's end, and now you can see if I refresh the page, my status has changed. So it says add my DNS record. So down here, it says your turn. You need to add a custom record to your DNS with the following information. Hopefully you are familiar with who your DNS provider is. We're going to show you how to do it via Google Domains, but the process should be pretty similar and it will use the same language. The user interface just might look different. But anyways, we'll show you how to do it with Google Domains. If you have a different domain or DNS provider, let us know and we should be able to kind of walk you through how to set it up for your account. But what I have here is I have a host name. This will be interesting. You have to follow along for these steps, but a CNAME and time to live and what our data or our pointer is for the DNS. And what we'll do is we'll go actually add a record on our DNS provider that has all of this info in it. So what I'll do is I'll click, you can click here, we made it so you can click the box and copy its text. So I'll click and copy this, and then I'm going to go over to my Google Domains. You can see right here, I just logged into Google Domains, and these are the domains that I have. So we wanted to do openhouse.dev. So I'll click openhouse.dev. And you can see on the left side, I have different options. What I want to do, and this is a little bit tricky if you're using a root domain, so that's why we made this its own video. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up a root domain, or I'll set up a subdomain for www.openhouse.dev, and then I'll configure all traffic to go to that subdomain. It's a little tricky, but I promise you just follow these steps and this is how it will work. So if I go to DNS here, for my host name I'll do www, then as we just saw over here, this needs to be CNAME, TTL, time to live, that'll be 3600, and here is my pointer that I want to point to right there. Okay, so I'll click save. And I just added a www subdomain to my DNS. Now, here's the tricky part, is because right now this should work. If I were to go to www.openhouse.dev/view/one of my space IDs, this white label domain would actually work. However, sometimes you don't want people to have to type www into their web browser. And so we actually need to configure it so that a person doesn't actually have to type in www. They could just, go to openhouse.dev/view/ whatever your space ID is. It'll make your URLs look better when you send them to people. And anyways, it just looks a little cleaner. You actually don't need the www anymore, but we need to add an extra step to make sure that's working properly. Okay, so on Google Domains, I just added this record. And now what we're going to do is I'll click website right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click setup forwarding. Okay, and it might have some already stuff set up here, but we're going to delete that. Okay, so just come in here and click delete. And basically what you want is you want openhouse.dev to forward to your www address. So you should be able, okay, I'm not going to put anything in here because it's just showing right now. This is going to apply to openhouse.dev. So keep this blank, make sure this one's deleted. What I'll do is I'm going to go www.openhouse.dev, okay? So it's kind of hard to tell from this screen, but if I click here, you can see what we're doing, forwarding from openhouse.dev right here to www.openhouse.dev, okay? Then I'm going to click advanced options. And what we want is we want this to be a permanent redirect. You can always change it later, but you call it a permanent redirect because basically it will help the internet know that it should always forward traffic from openhouse.dev to www.openhouse.dev. Path forwarding, we definitely want to enable path forwarding. So click forward path, and then I want to make sure that SSL is on, okay? So these are the three settings under advanced options. Redirect type, permanent redirect, path forwarding on, forward the path, and forwarding over SSL on, okay? So that'll work for both HTTP and HTTPS requests. So I'll click forward, and we should be good to go, okay? So what we're going to do is we'll go back to our Open House portal, and I'm going to click this button. This just indicates to us at Open House that you've completed the steps, and we can do some final checks on our end. So I'll click this, and you can see that the status changed, finishing setup. We're almost there. We're just finalizing things. And if you look now, I refreshed my page here. My status is active. We are good to go. But I do want to show you something because this is important. I thought about waiting to finish the video, but I want to show you how these changes to your DNS and your domain name can take a little while to propagate, to basically take place and be updated throughout the internet. So what you'll see now that I have this view space domain, that this is active, if I go to my spaces and I click on this one, for example, if I click on this space right here, you'll see it'll take me to the URL up here, okay? Notice the difference. So this is openhouse.dev. Before I set up this white label domain, if I would have clicked on that, it would have just taken me to openhouse.app, our primary domain. But I just set up this custom domain to openhouse.dev, and you can see it took me to that, but it says that it can't be reached. If I type www.openhouse.dev, so I add that www that we added, you'll see it will work. You can see right here, I'm at my custom domain name, www.openhouse.dev, but when I try to go to just openhouse.dev, it doesn't work. Why is that? That's because if you remember when we set up our path forwarding to go from openhouse.dev to www.openhouse.dev, I'll click edit forwarding so you can see right here. I'll make it bigger so you can see this. It might take up to 48 hours for your changes to take effect. So usually it's within a couple hours. I've never had it take longer than a day, but that's why. Basically, this forwarding from openhouse.dev to www.openhouse.dev has not propagated through the internet yet. It hasn't, updated it, and so it will eventually. And so that is what we're waiting on. But you can see the changes I made. If I go directly to www.openhouse.dev, they're working. I have a root, a root domain working as my white label custom domain for my spaces. And the only thing we're waiting on now is for this to work, basically for the www dot to be taken away and work as well. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always happy to answer and walk through personally through your DNS and help you configure it.